Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it. Good morning. How is everyone doing today? Wonderful. If you cannot hear me in the back, stand up and scream and shout. Okay, that means you all can hear me. That's a good thing. Before beginning, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Tom Vitucci, wherever he had went to. I'm extremely humbled and appreciative of the opportunity to be with you all today. And additionally, I'd like to thank you all for being here. I know that might sound cliche, and you might be wondering, well, what's he thanking me for? He doesn't even know me. And no, although I might not know you individually, I know something, at least a little bit about you. That instead of spending this morning sleeping in, you were willing to get in your vehicle at 4, 5, 6 in the morning, or for the folks who were here local, maybe not quite as early, but to commit to improving yourselves, to commit to professional development in whatever capacity you are at your university, whether an executive director, a graduate assistant, or a newly student employee. So for that, I commend you and thank you for being here. Today's presentation is by no means about me. However, I believe so often in life people listen, but they don't hear. And I don't believe that you will hear me until you truly know me. So that's why I'd like to spend the first few moments sharing just a little bit about my story and me. It's funny that although now I'm a public speaker and speak in front of audiences of all sizes, if somebody would have told me this is what I'd be doing when I was just a kid, I would have likely told them that they were crazy. I was a kid who didn't begin speaking until age 4, and when I did begin speaking, I had a speech impediment that required I go to a speech therapist up until my high school years. In short, I absolutely hated and feared public speaking. In school, I was a kid who would sit way in the back of class and hope and pray that I wouldn't even be called upon to do something like answering a question, because I would turn beet red in fear of embarrassment of what other people thought about how it was that I sounded. In the 8th grade, my principal looked me dead in the eyes and told me I'd be lucky to graduate high school. I took ownership of that. I believed in that. I wandered and walked aimlessly for the next year and a half, believing that, in fact, I would never be able to amount to anything. Until sometime in my 10th grade year, I realized that that did not have to define me, that her label of me did not have to define me. So in those very moments, I made a conscious effort and decision to commit myself to helping people. Now, I thought I was going to do that through education. You see, I wanted to become a school teacher because I wanted to ensure that any kid that I had the opportunity to cross his or her path of, that I could ensure that they would never have to feel the worthlessness, the shame, the embarrassment that I'd felt upon my principal telling me I wouldn't graduate high school. So the rest of high school did go good and well, and I did graduate. And upon graduating, I moved from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania to Fort Myers, Florida to attend FGCU, my wonderful alma mater. And college went good and well, and I studied education, and upon graduating, I'd landed my dream job, the one I had always envisioned since 10th grade, being a school teacher. Until after just 1 year, that dream job was no longer my dream job, and I quit. And soon the questions began pouring in. Well, Adam, what are you going to do? How are you going to support yourself? What are you going to do? And at 23 years of age, I had a well-polished and groomed response. I'm going to be a motivational speaker. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, as you might have imagined, I got some funny looks. With conversations that followed like, you're going to be a what? Who's going to pay you to speak? You're not talented enough. You don't have corporate America experience. You're not good enough. You grew up with a speech impediment. What makes you think you can speak in front of large crowds? In spite of that, I was insistent on making my dreams work. I was naive to think that it was going to be easy. I soon found it wasn't going to be easy. Having only been paid one time in 3 months, I was broke. My dreams weren't working. I was forced to move from my one-bedroom apartment that I could no longer afford. I took my belongings within and packed into a storage unit. What didn't fit, I put into the back seat, front seat, and trunk in my car. In those moments, ladies and gentlemen, I was too prideful to reach out and ask somebody for help because most of my friends and family had advised in the first place that I not go through with this. So instead of reaching out to anyone, I found myself parked in a Walmart parking lot, sleeping from the front seat of my car. I finally swallowed my pride and ego after a week of saying, I don't want to sleep in my car anymore, and called upon some friends in the Southwest Florida area who were kind enough to welcome me into their couch, to their futon, to their spare room. For 6 months, I had no real place to call home. For 6 months, I was humiliated. For 6 months, I questioned my desire to live, not just continue speaking, but to live. For 6 months, I felt like more of a failure than I'd ever felt like before. For 6 months, I thought that I would never give another presentation because I wasn't good enough. Fortunately, during those 6 months, I picked up a number of odd jobs. I was doing everything from scrubbing golf clubs at a local country club for $10 an hour, to throwing UPS packages over my shoulder for $11 an hour, to driving an Uber. You name it, I did it. And finally, when I got myself back into the right mindset and began to seek some mentorship and ask myself some really tough questions like, who do I need to learn from? Who do I need to connect with? What do I need to change about me in order for me to become what it is that I'm trying to become? I was able to pick up some pro bono engagements that led to some paid opportunities, that led to more paid opportunities, that led to my being able to gain traction in my business and sustain off of my speaking. I don't share this with you, ladies and gentlemen, for a boost to my ego or to toot my horn. And I certainly don't share this story with you for your sympathies or for your sorrows. I share it with you instead to, again, help you become more inclined to hear what it is I have to say today, and to help you recognize the profound importance of doing the small things in life and doing them well. You see, every person in this world, in my opinion, strives and longs to accomplish something in their life or within their organization. The problem is most people are always looking to external sources to solve their problems. They're always wishing and hoping for their dream to come to fruition, but they're not willing to take the steps to get their dream to come to fruition. They're always hoping and wishing for their program to get more funding, for their program to grow and become better, but they're not willing to look within. You see, there are a number of things that I can identify as having been instrumental to my being able to go from sleeping in my car to growing my business. I've had a tremendous amount of luck of people giving me opportunities when they didn't need to give me opportunities, of having to ask myself those very tough questions, reading some books, a number of things. But through it all, ladies and gentlemen, what it has come down to was my ability to look within, to dig deep within when I didn't feel like I wanted to. And that is what I hope to impart upon you today as an individual and as an organization, to help you look within. Because at the end of the day, whether individually or organizationally, internal drives external. What you do within, the books you read, the thoughts that occupy your mind, the positive self-talk that you have going on individually, and then organizationally, the teamwork, the learning opportunities you have for your staff, all of that stuff that you do within drives how people perceive you, how people respond to you, how people want to be a part of your program, a part of your department. So, from an individual perspective, two things I want to share with you to help you become more effective individually, to help you look within individually, is to control the controllable and to live with and work with an overwhelming amount of passion. Each and every day, ladies and gentlemen, there are a number of things that you and I cannot control. We can't control the weather outside. We can't control the traffic on the roads. And for the most part, we can't control how people are going to respond to us. And so frequently, human beings spend their time, their effort, and their energies dwelling upon those things that are outside of their control. And when you do that, you disrupt your ability to think clearly. You disrupt your ability to be as effective as you could otherwise be. focus your time and your effort and your energies on instead controlling that which is in your control, your work ethic. By a show of hands, does anyone get more than 24 hours in here? Raise your hand and say yes. Okay, good. We got an intelligent group. Believe it or not, I've asked folks that before, and I've had hands go up, and I always wonder, how do we get more than 24 hours? What's the secret? There is no secret. They just didn't understand the question is what it had come down to. But I share that with you not to be cliche, but to make you think. Right? We're all given 24 hours each and every day. Each and every day, you and I are blessed with the same 24 hours. What you do with those hours is directly within your control. You see, in every industry, in every recreation program, in every market throughout the world, there is going to be a top somebody. There is going to be a top program. There is going to be a top department, a rec department. And I always think about, I'm always fascinated with what is it that makes people get to the top of their respective marketplace? What is it that gets people to the top of their peak performance? What is it that allows people to get there? And it all comes down to how hard somebody is willing to work. Sure, some people have natural talents and abilities, but what they are able to end up accomplishing doesn't come without hard work. When you think about the hours that you're given in your day, I want you to think right now, what is it that you're truly doing in those hours? How hard are you working, ladies and gentlemen? If I come to your campus and I'm a guest for the day and I walk into your recreation facility, your aquatic center, or come out to play an intramural sport or whatever the case may be, I want to ensure that the people's departments that I'm immersing myself in and going to are people who have done their due diligence on the front end and working tirelessly day in and day out. I want to go to the recreation departments where I know people had the courage to ask the tough questions. I want to go to the recreation departments who I know the people were willing to be attentive in the first aid and CPR classes. You know why? Because when I have a heart attack on that treadmill or pass out on that treadmill, I need to know that the people in that facility have done their due diligence to save my life. Look, I've been where you've been. I was a student recreation employee for 4 years. I hated CPR and first aid classes. I'm being very candid with you. It wasn't until I graduated when I realized the importance of a CPR and first aid class. It might seem tedious and monotonous, but if you aren't attentive and you don't do your due diligence, when those classes, those seemingly insignificant classes are going on, you are letting down the individuals who walk through your door day in and day out. Day in and day out. Are you working hard, ladies and gentlemen, to get by? Or are you working hard to get better? There's a difference. A tangible difference. How many of you, by a show of hands, have taken a class before, or taken a test per se, and you got an A on that test, but a month later, you didn't remember a thing on that test? Probably 100% of us. I too was guilty as charged. In college, my only agenda was to make A's because I still, in those moments, wanted to prove my principal wrong from the 8th grade who told me I wouldn't graduate high school. What I didn't realize until after graduating is that I was just getting by, right? I would work tirelessly. I would work hard. I would grind. I would be up until the wee hours. I would work hard to study the information so that I could regurgitate the information to pass the test. But I wasn't working hard to get better. Most people work hard to get by in life. They work hard to just check boxes and say, oh, my associate vice president told me I needed to do that. I did it. How hard you work is in your control. You can't look externally. You have to look within. Something else that's within your control every single day, ladies and gentlemen, is your attitude. How many of you, by a show of hands, like to be surrounded by people who have a bad attitude? Okay. And something else we can all agree upon. The harsh reality is that so many people carry a bad attitude with them because their thinking is disrupted, because they are in a reactive state instead of being in a responsive state. They're always allowing things to happen to them, and when it disrupts this image in their mind of what they think life should look like or what they think their ride to work should look like, and it doesn't happen the way of which they thought it should look like, they get pissed off at everybody and everything who's in their way. I don't know about you, but I've worked places where as soon as walking in the morning, I can tell almost instantaneously that such and such is in a bad mood today. How many of you can relate? Say, I. And the reason often that people are in that bad mood, they're in that bad mood, isn't because they're a bad person, but because they're reacting to the things that happen in their life. Something as small as potentially coffee spilling on their shirt. They spill coffee on their shirt and they get cut off on the road, and now they are mad at everybody. So as soon as they walk into the office, they have this buzz off written on their face. Ladies and gentlemen, people are drawn to other positive, happy people. If you're constantly with a buzz off on your face, don't wonder why people don't want to talk to you. Don't wonder why your employees don't like working for you. Don't wonder why people avoid you at all costs. And the beautiful thing about this is, ladies and gentlemen, is that you can control that. But it requires an ability to shift your focus. It requires your ability to reflect, to take the time to think about what you're thinking about. Something else that we can control every single day is our professionalism. When I talk about professionalism, I'm not talking about how pretty you can look when you get up in the morning, how nice of a suit and tie you can wear when you come to work in the morning. I'm talking about, what are you doing to advocate for your profession? What are you doing to help your colleagues? What are you doing to advance this profession forward? I'd like to think that many of you are people who are willing to advance this profession forward based upon your being here today, because this was a free event to attend. Now, I don't know if your directors forced some of you to come. I don't know if that happened or not. But the reality is you could have easily called off and said, I'm not feeling too well, I can't go to the conference today. You made a conscious effort to be here, so for that I commend you. But it doesn't stop here. There are other opportunities to learn and grow professionally. Are you taking advantage of them? Are you taking advantage of them? It's within your control every single day. The second element that will allow us to be more effective as individuals is to operate with and live and work with an overwhelming amount of passion. Can you tell when talking with somebody, when meeting somebody for the first time, if they're passionate about what it is they do, yes or no? One more time. That wasn't as enthusiastic as I thought. Can you tell when talking with somebody if they're passionate about what it is they do, yes or no?
Yes.
Woo! I love it. Yes. Yes, you can undoubtedly tell, usually within 10 to 15 seconds of talking with somebody, if they're passionate. You can tell if they're passionate based upon how they articulate things, how well they listen to you, how they walk, how they talk, how they sit, how they stand. There are a number of things that allow you to identify if somebody is passionate about what they do. The harsh reality, ladies and gentlemen, is that so few of people live with passion in today's world because they've allowed life to beat them down. They've allowed adversities to beat them down. They've allowed the failed opportunities and the obstacles and the naysayers to beat them down. Every single day, we can make that conscious effort and choice to live and work with passion. People often ask me how it is that I can speak with so much passion. I hear it so frequently because I'm obviously not your traditional style speaker where I stand up at a podium and just read from a script and just have this nice little tone. because I care so much about what it is that I do and who it is that I have the potential opportunity to impact. When people ask me how it is that I'm able to speak with so much passion, they end up usually following that with saying they don't think that they can be passionate about anything in their life. And it always saddens me to hear that, to believe that there are people who feel like they can't operate with or live with passion. When somebody asks me how I'm able to live, speak, work with passion, I tell them it's because I have an overwhelming why. An overwhelming why. What I'm doing is not about me. It's not about how many social media followers I can get. It's not about how many of you like me. It's not about me standing up on stage and everybody just bowing down and giving me a great clap and this and that. It's not about me. It's about me wanting to help people who feel hopeless and helpless, because when my principal in the 8th grade told me that I wouldn't graduate from high school, I felt hopeless and helpless. She gave me the greatest gift I could have ever been given. She gave me a why, a reason to wake up in the morning. When I slept in my car, it re-energized and reaffirmed my why. I again felt hopeless and helpless, and if there was anything that I could do about it, I wanted to ensure that anybody who would come across my path, that I could instill in them some hope and inspiration so they don't have to feel hopeless and helpless. What's your why, ladies and gentlemen? Why do you do what you do? Why are you working in campus recreation? You don't need to answer this question. I just want you to truly think and reflect. If the first thought that came to mind was, well, I need to collect a paycheck, shame on you. Shame on you. Because every person who comes across your path is not getting the best version of you that you can give. Because your only agenda is to come in at 9 and leave at 5 and walk out the door with your nice paycheck. I know that some of you have been in this field for 30 years, potentially have days and weeks where you feel drained, where you feel beat down, when you can't get the funding that you need, where the state cuts your budgets, where X, Y, or Z happens in your life and you don't feel like you can be passionate again. In those moments, ladies and gentlemen, it's critical that you get back in touch with why you do what you do, why you got into recreation in the first place. My gut tells me most of you probably got into it because you wanted to make an impact. You wanted to serve kids. You wanted college students to experience college in the best ways possible. But over time, has that changed? If so, you need to get back in touch with why you're doing what you're doing. The second question I always get after I tell somebody to live with passion, you got to find your why, they always inevitably ask, well, that's great, but I don't have a why. I don't have a why. How do I find a why? Ladies and gentlemen, you have to look for it. You have to spend time reflecting and thinking about what you're thinking about. So many people come home from work, they turn on the TV, and that's the rest of their day. They're done. There's no more learning. There's no more growth. There's no more thinking. There's no more reflecting. They're done. What are you doing to continually immerse yourself in a culture of learning, of growth, of development? Find your why again, ladies and gentlemen. How's my time, Tom? Good. Is this clock accurate up here? Super. Ladies and gentlemen, the second element of my presentation and hope to leave you with today is to become more effective now as an organization. Right? Once we've mastered being effective individuals, to look within, to drive us externally, to get what it is that we're trying to get to be better in our work and in our life, it's important that we as an organization are able to grow and develop and provide opportunities for our staff, for one another. Internally, in organizations, what you do literally shapes how people perceive your department. How you treat one another, the opportunities you provide them for growth and learning and advancement, how you communicate with one another is instrumental into how the students who will be utilizing your facilities and coming to your departments and coming to take part in your programs will receive you. It is instrumental in how your region will respect you as a department. It is instrumental in how the country will respect you as a department. Two things to become more effective internally as an organization is to communicate effectively and to value your values and value your people. Communication is undeniably at the forefront of every organization's greatest strength or greatest weakness. That organizations that communicate efficiently and effectively inevitably always rise to the forefront of their respective marketplace because employees want to go to work for people who communicate with them the right way. Because people want to buy products from people who know how to communicate their message, their vision, etc. the right way. When you're communicating with your staff, it's imperative that you make them feel important. By a show of hands, how many of you have ever been talking with somebody and when talking with them knew almost immediately that they weren't tuned in or engaged with what you're saying? Say, I. The harsh reality is that they're focusing on something outside of their control. And what's your name? Lindsay. If I'm talking with Lindsay right now, and she's telling me something that is so important to her, and I'm not engaged in eye contact with Lindsay, or I'm thinking about something else that isn't of what's on topic right now, and she senses that, I am doing her a disservice. She is no longer going to come to me with those important things that she wants to tell because I didn't care. When you're talking with somebody, strive to make them feel like they are the most important person there is, because in that moment, they are. Lindsay, you are the most important person to me in this moment. Nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. When you're talking with somebody, can you say the same thing? Or do you have your own agenda? Are you thinking about what you're going to say next? Are you thinking about what your boss has just trickled down and you're so frustrated that you're not even listening to your colleague? You're not even listening to your employee. You're not even listening to your staff member. When you communicate with folks, strive to make them feel like they are so important. I'm not talking about being unauthentic. You don't have to agree necessarily with what is said, but you can show them that you care by making eye contact, by matching their emotion. If they're crying, don't smile. If they're smiling, don't get angry. If they're angry, don't smile. Match their emotion to let them know that you're genuinely engaged. If they tell you that, God forbid, their dog just got ran over by a car and you say, okay, you're showing that you have no empathy or no care for who they are as human beings. Care about your people enough so that when you're communicating with them, it's not about you, it's about them. It's about them. I have a 5-step process before sending out an email, a business-oriented email, or making a business-oriented phone call that is just Adam 101. These 5 steps keep me on track to make sure my communication is not only, one, not just about me, but is meaningful. Before I share those 5 things, I have a question for you. Again, by a show of hands, how many of you have ever attended a meeting or received an email that was a complete waste of your time? Raise your hand and say, yes. Woo! We can all agree again. You know why that happens? There are a few reasons. Number one is people love to hear themselves speak. People love to let everybody know how much information they've accrued in their life, so let me just tell you how much I know. The second reason is because they're doing it to check a box. Oh, the Vice President of Student Affairs told me I need to have 4 meetings a quarter. Here's number 3. Next week will be number 4. We'll put a little agenda together. Why does that happen? Why can't we just shift and say, you know what? Let me think about what I'm thinking about. And that's where this 5-step process comes in. The first question I ask myself, and you may want to write these down if you have a pen and paper in front of you, because I guarantee you it's going to help you become and produce more effective meetings, emails, and conversations. The first one is it clear? Is it clear? Is what you're putting in your email or what it is that you're trying to ask somebody to do crystal clear? You see, what I might think to be this way, somebody else might think to be this way. The image you have in your mind isn't the same image that somebody else has in their mind. They don't have the same background knowledge. They don't have the same experiences. Therefore, it's utterly important that you ask yourself, is this clear? I'm going to use an intramural example because I can relate to that world. I was in intramurals at FGCU. I'm just going to throw this example to you. If you're a supervisor and you're asking a colleague, maybe it's a colleague who's on your same level or a student employee who you are in charge of, and you ask him or her to go back from the intramural fields to grab a red folder in your office that's on the 3rd shelf of the bookshelf in your office, and they come out to that field with a red folder that was on the 3rd shelf of your bookshelf in your office, and it's not the right folder, who's at fault, ladies and gentlemen? You or them? I heard it over here. You. Absolutely. The reality is people don't like to highlight their own flaws, especially leaders. Effective leaders will. Leaders who are about me, will blame the individual who went in to get their red folder on the 3rd shelf of their bookshelf, and they'll blame them. See, in your mind, you envisioned where that red folder was. You knew it was on the 3rd shelf of your bookshelf. What you forgot to let your colleague know was that also on the 3rd shelf of your bookshelf were 3 other red folders that were stacked underneath a stack of papers like this, and that was the one you wanted. Be clear about what it is that you're communicating to folks so that they know exactly what they have to do, when they have to do it, and why they have to do it. The second question is it meaningful? Is the communication meaningful? Look, I'm all about culture within organizations, and I believe that people should be on the same page as to what's going on. However, if you know that you're about to send out a piece of correspondence that has literally absolutely nothing to do with a person in aquatics, why are you going to include them on that email or invite them to that meeting? If the communication is not meaningful for the person, they're going to feel like their time is being wasted. Does that make sense? Say aye. Aye. Yes. Is it meaningful? The third element is it helpful? Is the correspondence you're sending out, the conversation you're going to have knees to knees with your colleague who might have been doing things not according to procedure, is the communication you're going to have with him or her going to be helpful for not only them, but for your department? We can measure that in many different aspects. There's a lot of gray area in that question of, is it helpful? You have to identify what helpful means in that context. How it is that you deliver the information will be a key indicator of if it's helpful or not, because if you come across as arrogant with a demeaning tone, it doesn't matter what message you deliver, it's not going to be helpful for them. The fourth element is, does it make the situation better? Or does it make our organization better? If you have a colleague, ladies and gentlemen, who has come to work late 3 days in a row, 3 days in a row, they've come to work late, and you're going to sit down and have a knees-to-knees conversation with him or her, you have to be very certain that the communication that you deliver and how it is that you deliver it is going to make the situation better. Because if it doesn't make the situation any better, why are you going to engage in that conversation? It's only going to further piss off the person of whom you're trying to communicate with. If you have to have that conversation with the individual who showed up late 3 days in a row, and you come at them with the following. What's your name? Megan. You've been to work late 3 days in a row. If you come to work late again, you're done. You're fired, and we can't have any more of it. Ladies and gentlemen, you might have gotten Megan in that moment a little bit frightened, and she's going to come to work on time every day thereafter. But the communication didn't help the situation because she just lost all respect for you as a leader, as a colleague, as a peer, because you didn't know how to articulate it in such a way that made the situation better. It's not making the situation better if it's just prolonging what's going to inevitably happen later. She's going to come to work on time 6 straight months, then she's going to miss work again. And at that point, she's probably hoping you'll fire her because she doesn't want to work for you anymore. Now you've got bigger issues. Now you've got to spend marketing dollars to go recruit a new person. Instead of, ladies and gentlemen, thinking about the communication on the front end and going to Megan and saying, Megan, what's going on? You've been to work late 3 days in a row. What can I do to help you? Is everything okay at home? Ladies and gentlemen, we're dealing with human beings. We're dealing with human beings. Let them know that you care. The last element of this 5-step process, if you will, is to make sure that you're sending the appropriate form of text, communication. So ask yourself, am I engaging in the appropriate form of communication? Some people like to be communicated with via text. Some people like it face-to-face. Some people like emails. Some people would love a one-on-one meeting, a 5-person meeting, whatever the case may be. You have to be very clear about what it is your colleagues, about what it is your people want. Because everybody takes shots at millennials and say that they don't like to have face-to-face conversations. Well, guess what? That might be true for some, but if I worked for you, I would hate it if you texted me all the time. It would turn me off. I want to discuss face-to-face because that's how I operate. Know your staff, know your situation. The second element to help you become more internally effective, I'm almost done, Tom. I know my time is running short. The second element to help you become more effective internally is to value your values. Value your values. Look, by a show of hands, how many of you have a set of core values at your organization? I trust all of us. And I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand for this, but how many of you could actually recite what those core values are? How many of you actually live by and work by those values within your organization? I met a guy a number of months ago. He owns a very successful construction company, employs over 300 people, does $400 million a year. He's the CEO of the company, and he tells me that more than anything else, more than technical skills, more than how pretty their resume is, more than how pretty their education is, he's hiring people who align with his set of core values. Your core values have got to shape what it is that you do. If your number one core value is integrity and somebody lies consistently, you've got to get rid of that person. Because your values shape your culture and drive how people perceive you. If you won't uphold and live by those values, why are they even in place? And lastly, you have to value your people. You have got to value your people. Have any of you ever heard the story of JFK at NASA in 1961 with a custodian? A few folks. Okay, great. So my apologies for having reiterated what you've already heard. JFK goes to NASA in 1961. He sees a custodian mopping the floor. He goes up to the man and he said, "How you doing, sir?" The custodian says, "I'm doing well, Mr. President. And how are you?" He says, "Well, I'm doing well too." And the president says to him, "Sir, what do you do here?" While the custodian's mopping the floor, he looks up at him and he says, "Sir, I'm putting a man on the moon. I'm putting a man on the moon." Here was this custodian who seemingly, likely, made the littlest amount of money on NASA's staff, but believed so clearly in that vision that he believed with everything in him that he was putting a man on the moon. In my estimation, why that man was able to articulate with confidence and with certainty that he was helping to support that vision and put a man on the moon is because the leaders made him feel as though he was important. Who do you place value on in your organization? It's easy when the associate vice president comes through to be peppy, cheerful, and kind. It's easy when your bosses come through to be peppy, cheerful, and kind. But what about the custodial staff who does clean up your facility? Do you greet them with the same respect? Do you treat them with the same humility? Do you give them the same attention and love that they're due and deserving? Something to think about, ladies and gentlemen. I'll leave you with this, as I know Tom's probably ready to kick me off stage. If you've heard nothing else from me today, nothing else from me today, I want you to leave here, ladies and gentlemen, in knowing that you matter and you are needed. That you matter and you are needed as individuals, not just within your organization, but within life. And I want you to know that when I'm saying this, I'm not coming to you from a place of what I like to call woo-woo. Because I'm not one of these speakers who tell you if you close your eyes, you see it, you believe it, oh, you're going to achieve it. Because that's not how life works. But I'm here to tell you that when I'm telling you that you matter and you are needed, I can say it with conviction and with confidence because so many times in my life I felt like I didn't matter and I wasn't needed. When times get tough, ladies and gentlemen, tap back into your why. Challenge yourself to be reflective and always think about what it is that you're thinking about. Never forget that not only to your organization, not only to your families, not only to your friends, but to this world, no matter who you are, where you're from, or what you do, that you matter and you are needed. Thank you so much. I'd like to take a selfie with them real quick if I have a minute. One last request, if you'd be so kind. So the recreation group is always full of energy and full of people who love what they're doing.